Hey everybody, I'm PB Squamer, and as the title implies, we're going to go through every car I've ever owned. Now, as a car guy and a person trying to start car YouTube, and I'm trying to work with the dealership and all that stuff, I figured I'll go through all the cars I've ever owned because, it's probably relevant. First car, 2008 Honda Accord EXL Coupe. Now, I own this exact color. It was red Honda Accord. It was the 4-cylinder. Yeah, and stylistically, this is a great car. It looks good. I got a lot of compliments for someone that spent I don't know. Well, my dad bought me this car. It was a hand-me-down car, as the next car is going to be as well. But I got a lot of compliments. People were like, "This is a nice car," and I was like, "It costs like nothing." But it was nice. The interior of it, as you can see here, I had the tan one. I had the coupe, so the back doors that you see in there weren't existent. But the front looks pretty much the same. It had this wood paneling. Mine had wood paneling on the steering wheel a little bit too, but I loved the interior of this car. It looked great. It was very comfortable. Mine had a sunroof. My friends weren't a huge fan with how big the back seat was, but I think it made the car look better. It was a great car, stylistically. It did have some problems. First, it was really slow. As I said, it was the 4-cylinder. It was very, very slow. It was not the V6. It was not the VTEC. It was a very, very slow car. And obviously I had nothing to compare it to, but when I started to drive other cars or drive with friends or something like that, like my buddy in high school, he had the V8 Jeep Grand Cherokee, which isn't outrageously fast, but I was like, it was miles ahead of what this is. On top of the fact that it was slow, though, it got horrible gas mileage, like 18 to 20 a gallon, which is not right because this car was supposed to get like 30, and I didn't. And it wasn't because of my driving, and my dad would drive it, he'd get the same thing. I have no idea what was wrong with it. I have no idea why it was like that. It wasn't super high mileage, but I don't know. And on top of that, when we traded it in, the rims on the left side of the car where it had bent so much that the tires wouldn't hold air. And I have no idea why they bent. I didn't run it into anything. I did hit a deer, but that was the other bumper on the right side, and that was the only accident I was ever in, and I have no idea why. The rims did that. I didn't curb brash it. I don't know. I never hit a curb. I don't know. I have no idea why I did that, but my dad traded it in, and he always talks about how he traded in, and then a week later he drove past the dealership and was sitting out front, but it was literally it was tilted super far to the side because one had full tires and the other side had no air in it. So. Then I have my 2014 Mazda 6 Sport. This was also a hand-me-down car. I told my dad, I was like, hey, I want to start Uber driving. So I Uber drove when I turned 21 in college. So I needed a car with 4 doors, and he gave me this. Stylistically, is not a nice car. It's a Sport. It's the lowest level trim of the Mazda 6. You got the Sport, the Touring, and the Grand Touring. This is just a Sport. It is a very basic exterior of a car. I've never been a huge fan of it. I never liked the exterior, but it's, he let me have it. He didn't make me make car payments on it until I graduated, so, it was something. The interior is just as simple. These cloth seats, as far as cloth seats go, I guess they were stylistically okay. They were black, so they blended in well. I did have a manual like this one you see here. I did Uber drive in a manual, which a bunch of people were like, oh my gosh, but the clutch was super light. It wasn't hard to do, even for driving for hours and hours. The car did get 36 miles per gallon, which is great when you're Uber driving. It was great in general. So I got really good gas mileage in that thing. The major problems I had with it was terrible in the snow and rain. I have no idea why. It shouldn't be. It's front-wheel drive and has basically no torque, but it was awful in the snow and the rain, and I don't know why, and my dad didn't know why, and I had no idea. But again, it served its purpose. It was a good Uber drive car, and I eventually paid it off from my dad, and I traded in and got this 2016 Dodge Challenger Scat Pack. I think this is my favorite car I've ever owned. I was driving home from work one day, this is right when quarantine ended, and we had gone back to work. I was driving home one day, and I was like, that's a beautiful car. Now, it's not this one exactly. I didn't have the shaker, but it was a white Challenger with a black hood, and it just was like, oh my gosh, I want to go drive it. So I went in and test drove it, and I got an astounding deal. I mean, it had, I think, like 20,000 miles on it. It was 28.5. I talked them down to 28, and then when they gave me final numbers, for whatever reason, they didn't include taxes, tags, and titles when I went to go get the check. So when I went to go get the check from Navy Federal and came back and I gave it to them, they're like, hey, you're like, I think I was $1,700 short. And I was like, oh no. So what they did is they split the difference with me, or at least they thought, and then they did the math again, and ended up they gave me $1,000, so I only had to put $700. So really, I paid $27 for this car, which is outrageous. Interior-wise, it was very bolstered. They're very bolstered seats, so they hold you very well. I had the manual like this one you see here. The clutch was crazy heavy. Like it was a chore to drive, but it honestly that made it was fun. And one of the reasons it was so fun. The gauge cluster was awesome. The screen was awesome. It was just a really great vehicle. The reason I ended up trading it in is because, I mean, when I first bought it, if you guys remember, post-quarantine gas prices were like nothing. So I was spending like $30, maybe $40 a week. I mean, this thing gets like 16 miles to the gallon. I was spending like $30 or $40 a week on gas. But by the time gas prices started to really rise, I was spending like $120 a week on gas, and I couldn't afford it. Like I was like, this is outrageous. If I could have done it over, I would have just bought a daily driver car for super cheap and kept this car. But at the time, I didn't want to take on a second car payment. It was kind of a scary thing. I wasn't making as much money as I am now, so you know, I could have done it, but I didn't think to do it. So the good thing is car prices started to rise, so I gained a ton of equity in this car. I think I got traded it in for $28.5. So I actually made money off this car, and I put 20,000 miles on it before I did so in the like year and a half I had it. I drove this thing heavily. I mean, anytime I got a chance, it was just a great car. So I drove it to work every day, but on top of that, if I was having a bad day or a good day or whatever, I would drive this car because it was awesome. So yeah, it was a great car. Then I got the 2018 Volkswagen Golf GTI SE, and stylistically, I think this is such a good-looking car. The SE1 comes with these LED headlights, and I think they look fantastic. I had the black one like you see here. I think it's such a handsome little car. It is very tiny when you're standing next to it, but in the inside it's actually pretty big. I had no problems with this car. It was a great car. The interior also was super nice. The screen, the SE, it comes with a bigger screen like you see here. It was a very large screen. This one's a manual. I had an automatic just because that's the one that was available when I bought it. Although the automatic had the DCT, the dual clutch transmission, and man, it was really quick for shifting. I think it is the fastest shifting car I've owned, for sure. The flat bottom steering wheel was awesome. The gauge cluster, really, it was a great little car. I had no issues with it. The only thing I had, and it's not even an issue, it's just that I went from the Challenger to this, and after maybe a year, I don't know, or so, I was like, I want something with more horsepower and more sporty. I daily drove this thing, and it got like 30 miles per gallon, which is pretty average. The 0-60 time was around 5.8 seconds, I think. So it was a quick little thing, but I just wanted something more aggressive, more sporty, and just a lot more. So I traded it in, and I got the 2021 Dodge Charger 392 Scat Pack Daytona Edition. Now, I think this was my biggest mistake of buying a car. I mean, it was a great car. There's no major complaints. It was faster than the Challenger I had, mainly because it was an automatic, so that was a big thing, because they only make automatics and Chargers. But there was a few things. First, I spent $52,000 on it, which is drastically more than I'd ever spent on a car before. And I think that was a problem. And if you can't tell from me talking, I trade in my car. I don't keep them long. So it was a mistake to spend that much on a car that I was going to, even if I liked it when I bought it, I was going to get bored with quick. And that's exactly what happened. I got bored with it so much faster than I got bored with the Challenger. And it wasn't really the car's fault. I mean, it was a great car. It served its purpose well. Having a back seat and 485 horsepower was nice. It was a good car. Stylistically, it was very handsome. It sounded great. The interior was very comfortable. The seats were bolstered, but they were big. Personally, I liked the gauge cluster on the Challenger when I had it because it had a more rounded gauge cluster and it was more muscle car-y. I had the Daytona edition, so you know it looked nice, had all these extra features, it had pretty much every bells and whistle that you could think of: forward collision, blind spot warning, heated seats, cold seats, heated steering wheel, you know, all the bells and whistles that really came with the car. But when I traded it in, well, first off, I was losing value very quickly because I bought high when the car prices were high, and as you know, car prices are now coming down, so I was losing value in it pretty quickly. Even with the money I put down, it was clear I was going to be upside down on it quickly. And so I just spent too much. And for future reference, when I buy a fun car, I'm going to spend, it's got to be under 30 until I make a sizable more amount of money. Or if this YouTube channel ever takes off enough to the point where it's a write-off, things like that. But it was just a mistake of a car. I spent too much. I didn't like as much as I spent on it. So I traded it in. On top of the fact that I was losing value and all things like that, I was also using it pretty often. And my job, the new job I got that was supposed to be 100% telework, quickly turned into 1 day a week. And then 1 day a week turned into, well, 1 day a week with meetings and things like that. And my commute to get to work is like an hour and something like that. So traded this in for all of those reasons, and I got the 2012 Toyota Prius 4, which car people are like, ugh, which I get. It is the ugliest car ever, but it is exactly what I needed, and I don't regret buying it at all. I get like 50 to 55 miles per gallon usually. It rides smooth enough. When you get highway speeds, it starts to get a little choppy and vibrate and stuff like that. But you know, it's still just exactly what I currently need for a daily driver. I mean, my commute's really long, things like that. It wasn't super expensive. I paid like $19 for this, which is still pretty high, but car prices are high. So plus I needed to get rid of the Charger before I was upside down on it, and that was coming very close. So yeah, I mean, interior wise, mine has leather seats. This one has like this cloth seats. I mean, it's pretty simple inside. Mine's got heated seats. This one I think does too. It has this tiny toy of a gear shift, which actually is weird because it doesn't, I don't know for sure, but I don't think it's mechanical at all. I think it's literally just you press it and then the car, it's all electronic. It's just sending a signal and that's all it's doing. So it's kind of a weird feeling when you do it because it's so light. And you don't have a gauge cluster at all. It doesn't tell you what RPMs you're at. It only tells you your speed, which is up there in the dash, like way up there. And then it also tells you how to get better gas mileage. It'll show you that. But I honestly don't regret this car at all. Like it's just exactly what I currently need. When car prices go down, and then I'm assuming by next year or a little bit later, I will buy a fun car, and then I'll have my fun car and my Prius that I will use for daily driving, and then my fun car when I'm not daily driving. So yeah, all the car people are like, oh my god, a Prius, and you know, I agree with you, it's ugly and it's super slow and all that, but it gets great it gets great gas mileage, it does what it needs to do, and I really have no complaints with it thus far. The one I have is a 2012, has around 40,000 miles. It was an old person's car, it sat in a garage, the paint looks exactly like this, which it hasn't decayed at all. It's a great little A to B car with no frills, no excitement. The only issue I have with it is that road noise is kind of a problem. When you're going highway speeds, it's quite loud. And since you can hear in, people can hear you. So mine, I don't think this one has it. No. Mine has the JBL sound system, which, I mean, it's not great, it's not terrible, but it does have a pretty significant subwoofer in it. So when I listen to like rap music or things like that, if I'm in my neighborhood, I turn some heads because they can clearly hear. Because the first time I did it, I was like, what are they staring at? But I realized it's because there's no like sound deafening in either direction, so they can very much hear. So, well, that's my list. If anybody has any questions about the cars I have listed or want me to expand on them further or talk about things like that, I would be happy to. Please comment any opinions or like things I can improve. Obviously, I'm doing my best to improve as much as I can. I'm still kind of learning how to edit and stuff like that. So yeah, if you guys would like to get a jump on the ground floor of my YouTube channel, please do subscribe below, join the Squamer Squad, and I'll see you guys again next time.